Why do I now have to be governed by giving my details over because I want to look at something on the internet?
I don't see why it needs to be an overall thing for the entire country for every citizen.
Well, surely it's a good thing, gentlemen. You can't say anything bad about it because it's the government, trying to protect our children.
Hello and welcome to another Slotted In There video where we're having a discussion this time about the UK Online Safety Act. Does it protect children? Is it an invasion of privacy? Does it do more harm than good? Or is it a positive thing? What do you guys think?
Well, surely it's a good thing, gentlemen. You can't say anything bad about it because it's the government, trying to protect our children, and that's their job to do that, isn't it? So, that's good. Anything so children don't see bad things online has got to be good. And yes, it might mean, it penalises or we have to give over a bit of data potentially, about ourselves. But isn't that worth the sacrifice, to save the children? Think of the children. I feel you have a differing opinion, Damien.
Yeah, it's the beginning of control, and it's also going to push everybody to having to give and submit their data and other bits and pieces, all relating so the government can watch over you, record what you're doing, and hold it against you at a later date. And all I would say is, if everybody in the UK at the moment, it is probably going to spread elsewhere and probably has already. I think Australia's on the list to implement it, and also Canada. And all I will say to you is, what are the parents or guardians doing to allow their children enough internet time for them to find places that they shouldn't be looking?
And second to that, Damien, is while I agree that maybe the government's got an overarching obligation to look after its citizens, not only children, it needs to start in the home. And I mean, the internet's been around for quite a long time now. So if you're not savvy about the internet or how it works or whatever, you shouldn't really be on it. But there's plenty of methods that you can use within your own household to prevent members of your household from accessing certain things. And there's loads of different services, from DNS filtering to actual applications to stop people accessing certain content. So, and there's also the ISP level. It could be done at an ISP level where you can either opt in or opt out for your particular internet connection. I don't see why it needs to be an overall thing for the entire country for every citizen.
Well, I'll be honest, I've reached a certain age where I can legally go for a drink, I can own and drive a car. Why do I now have to be governed by giving my details over because I want to look at something on the internet that an other person deems doesn't suit their morals?
I was going to say, another interesting thing about age there is that the legal age for consent in the UK is 16, whereas now the legal age to view adult content is 18. Which seems a little confusing to me.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I mean, from a sort of parent's point of view, one of the examples I can give, there is stuff out there to sort of filter it and block bad stuff, isn't it? You can block chats and all that lot. But I must say, some of it is not that simple, and they're from big companies. So a prime example, which isn't obviously sort of filtering adult content in one big respect, like say, is Xbox. When you get an Xbox, it's default to an adult thing that everything's open 18, which is great because I think the main users to actually set up the parental stuff actually pretty blinking awkward, because I did it one time and it was so hard to set up. And then when you finally set it all up, and it is great when it sets up, because like when my lad buys something or anything, even a demo, it gets pinged to my phone. It's all great, and I can put age filters on it. Great once you set it up, but it was a bit of a nightmare for sort of me. And I feel I'm a bit more, tech-minded in that sense to set it up, but it was quite a pain to set it up. But the annoying thing as well, then, you go onto certain programs, and they're like Minecraft. It's loads of kids play Minecraft, but you had to turn off some of these parental settings just so they could chat to each other, because there's a certain, you have to tick it that anybody can jump into the chat for it to then work. And you're like, what a ridiculous setting that Microsoft has set, knowing that kids do that. So that is a sort of separate issue. But you say there's sort of methods that people can filter this themselves and parents can look after. But actually, some of the companies don't make it easy as it's supposed to be, or you make out it is. So I can see from a parent's point of view, it can be a bit tricky to set up some of these filtering that you're on about, or Sean was on about, to set up on certain sites and everything.
Like I say, that's true, but the government could have just passed legislation that says that the ISPs have to filter it, which means that from your perspective, it's just a phone call to your internet service provider and say, I would like my internet connection to be filtered, please. And it may be that because that might incur, they might have to employ some extra kit to do that it may be that there's an extra cost associated with it. So it might add a couple of quid or something to your monthly bill. But if you're choosing that, then that's up to you.
But which way, Tim, should the choice go in that sense? Should it not be locked down for everybody? And if you want it opened up, should you not then be calling the service provider to say, let it open? Should it not be that way around rather than locking it down?
That depends on whether the ISPs choose to charge for it. Because if they're choosing to charge for it and everybody gets it and then you have to opt out, that doesn't make sense. Whereas if everybody is open and then you call your ISP to say, I would like mine to be filtered, then you are paying for that service. And only you, not other people that may not want to be paying for it.
My ISP did have a safety guard put on the account, which I paid, I think it was an extra £4 per month. Only £4, but over 12 months for something I didn't ask for, didn't want, and had to then contact them to remove. Why should I have to do it? I have no children in my household to protect, so therefore I shouldn't be forced into it. It should be up to the parent or guardian to look after and sort out their own children, not have everybody else have to then battle through to get access to something they want to look at that's maybe not deemed as child friendly, such as an 18 plus certificate film or some anime stuff, this kind of thing. Everybody has their own perks and quirks. We should not be blanket bombed to a specific level on other people's morality. We're grown-ups, we're adults, we're all individuals, different likes, different tastes. We should be allowed to have that freedom, which is now getting taken away.
I was going to say that's actually an interesting point, is that they're not actually blocking illegal material in a lot of these examples. They're blocking what they're calling harmful material. And harmful is a very broad term. It's very difficult to define what harm is. I mean, we've seen, the Isaac Asimov iRobot stuff where the three laws don't work mainly because they include the word harm. Harm does not make sense. It's a very bad way of phrasing that.
I think the problem, and there needs to be a different way, like I say, I totally agree of doing it. But if you go back to the charge model, the reason is there's a charge, no one wants to pay it. Some people can't afford to pay it, but ultimately no one wants to pay it. And basically at the moment, if you're I won't say you're a responsible adult in that sense, if you have the time and you can look after it, your children in that sense, you'd sort of have these filters on anyway. It's for those people that maybe don't have time, work too much, or don't see what their children are doing, isn't it, if they've got other jobs to do. So that's why they're reliant on these filtering set up by government and other people. And you may say that's poor parenting, but unfortunately that's some of the cases at the moment, isn't it? And that's why it is. So when you're then aiming at those people who may be on low incomes to say spend another £4 or £5 a month on some filtering, yes, it's a good idea and it sounds logical to me, but they might not be able to afford it, or they might just think that's another, I'd rather pay that £5 on my Disney subscription because that'll entertain them more than this weird filtering. So I appreciate the logic might not work.
That's on them. That's on them, Chris. And like I alluded to in my first statement, there are free services out there, OpenDNS being one of them. You just go to OpenDNS, create an account, and you can literally choose categories to allow or disallow, including pornography, including illegal stuff, guns, that kind of stuff, drugs. And you can choose to allow any of these through to your internet or not. And then all you need to do is put the OpenDNS server addresses in your router on the so any device going through that router using the router to get to the internet will be filtered to OpenDNS. It's free, there's no charge, it's easy to set up, and that's open to everybody. And that's a choice. That's a choice that you can make as a parent to filter the whole household in your house, not the entire country.
I was going to say that's sort of really the point here, is that we weren't given the choice. But let's move the discussion along a little bit. So in terms of the fact that we are now required in many cases, even on places like Steam, of having to, in a way, confirm our age. So in the case of Steam, they're using credit cards to do this, but there are plenty of sites out there, including stuff like adult content and that kind of thing, where we are supposedly handing over images of ourselves, or in fact, government issued IDs in some cases. Is that safe? And, considering as well the people that are processing this information and then getting rid of it, or at least that's what we're told, are companies like, for example, Persona, which is not a UK company. This is an American company. So, and I don't know how we all feel about it at the moment, but I'm not entirely convinced that the US government isn't a hostile government at this point. Now, that's probably a discussion for something else, but I'm not comfortable with my data being on a server in the US when the US has the Government Patriot Act, or the Patriot Act in general, and they can just say, hand over that information. It also possibly means that this is one thing that I've been thinking about a little bit recently. We really probably need to stop thinking about data. These people have our data. We should move away from that and start thinking about it as a big bag of free money, because that's what our data is to a lot of these people. They're able to sell it onto advertisers. They're able to sell it in some cases on the dark web if they're a more inscrutable company. And this means that we're handing over a big fat bag of free money to them, and they're saying, "Oh, once we're finished looking at it, we'll destroy it. It'll be gone." And I'm like, I'm not sure I believe that.
Press X to doubt.
How safe are we as adults?
Don't most companies sort of say that? That's the sort of problem with the internet and sites, isn't it? They store your data, and you've got to trust, in a general term, like your card details, if you buy something, isn't it? You've got to trust that they're storing that data correctly. And yes, some of them obviously get hacked and you could lose stuff out, isn't it? But either you've got to have a bit of trust somewhere in the system that it's going to work and they're going to uphold what they're saying to get rid of the data, or the whole system falls down and you just don't have the internet, basically, or shop online. Because
can I give you an example, Chris, of a company that failed in terms of trust? This would be the Flow Health app. You ever heard of this? So the Flow Health app is an app that women can use in order to monitor their menstrual cycle. And it turned out that the people that made the Flow Health app were selling, or at least passing on, this information to Google and Meta, so that Meta and Google could better advertise to women, where they were advertising more things like cosmetics at certain parts in the cycle, or maybe dietary things like chocolate and that kind of stuff in other parts of the cycle. Doesn't that make you feel awfully creeped out? Because it makes me feel really creeped out. That's not right. And this is supposedly a health app. You would think that if you're going to be able to trust something, a health app would be a fairly safe bet, right? But exactly. So why are we trusting these companies with information about our identities? It doesn't make good sense.
Well, I'm not keen on it, don't say, but I'm just saying there's got to be some trust there to make the whole system work. And yes, there's some that go wrong. I've trusted Sony with my card details before, and it got hacked and someone bought stuff on my account, got my money back. But you trust these big corporations, isn't it? Because you want to use their services, and you hope most of the time it goes right for most people, but some people get done over. But if you didn't trust them, we all went that, you can't have the system. So I'm not saying that I totally agree, and I don't want to hand over my data as much. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, have we not got to think you've got to trust in some way, or the system doesn't work? What other system is there to use?
Well, we've already covered that. We've talked about blocking at the ISP level. Sean's suggested OpenDNS. There is stuff that you can do with your home router. There's a number of options, some of them more complicated, some of them less complicated. However, this particular method seems to be actively endangering people. Recently we had the stuff coming up on Wikipedia, where now the UK government wants people to register posts that they've put. So basically, if you want to include some information on Wikipedia, or you want to correct or change an article on Wikipedia, you now have to submit who you are. You cannot do it anonymously. The UK government wants to know who you are and what it is that you're saying, which is concerning because there are plenty of people out there doing whistleblowing and that kind of stuff where they could get in serious trouble, but they're actually providing the rest of us with legitimate, useful information to know. So that's the fact that the UK government wants to know who we are and what we're doing at all times is worrying. And initially, I didn't think that this was like conspiracy theory level stuff. I thought they were just genuinely making a misguided effort to try and protect children. But when you look at the other things they're doing, where they're trying to get backdoors into communications between Apple devices, into WhatsApp, in the UK now, your iCloud is not encrypted. These are real concerns. The government is trying to surveil us at a very, very high level.
Can I just ask?
Yep.
At what part of any of that is protecting the children, which is how this was originally sold?
Okay. Let's move on to exactly that. How does this protect the children? Does it, in fact, protect the children?
No.
I agree.
No. It just gives them another opportunity to find another way around it. And if you've got a really intelligent young kid, he's going to find a way.
I mean, not being funny, you can watch any YouTube video, and I can watch it on some harmless stuff, some gaming stuff, and they'll tell you straight away about VPNs and things to bypass. And like, you're not even trying. So I totally fully agree with that. It's completely stupid in my mind what they're doing. But I mean, what we probably need to think of, you obviously suggest some methods, but I mean, what's the best way the government should be doing is maybe educating them more in these sort of free methods, like Sean said, about the DNS naming, isn't it? And other services that we can do, because it's all right ranting about it, but what's the solution, gentlemen? What could we suggest instead?
Well, I think we covered a lot of that at the start.
Yeah.
The ISP level blocking makes the most sense. It's easy because the ISP takes care of all the technical work. All you have to do as a parent is call them up and say, I would like my internet to be filtered. That's it. There's no complicated technical stuff to know. That is the easiest solution. It is also one of the safest solutions because it doesn't require anybody to hand over any details about themselves they're not comfortable handing over to an unknown third-party company.
Yep. In addition to that, like I've already said, there's services like OpenDNS and many more like that. There's also applications you can put on mobile devices or PCs, laptops, that kind of thing for children under the age of 16, which prevent them going to certain websites or going to like chat rooms and things like that, depending on their age. So from a personal family level, there's also those options. Admittedly, that's a bit more technically involved than like the ISP doing it, but those options are available. And I, for one, use this with my two young sons when they were growing up. So they couldn't get access to this content, and that was 15 years ago. So the technology and the methods to do this have been available for a long time. It's just people either haven't known about them or haven't been bothered to implement them, if they have young families, if that's what the government's concern really is.
I think the big problem is a lot, and I'd probably get ridiculed for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. But we're in a generation now where mummy or daddy is an iPad. And it's just, I've unwrapped it, I've done the bits I need to do, hand it over. I mean, we've seen in the news how children as 3-4-year-olds have been left to play with the iPad on whatever it is that they want to play on. And then they've ended up running up a massive credit card bill of thousands of pounds or dollars or whatever, because the kid's just been left there and he's been tapping purchase just so as he wants to get later or further through the whatever the app is game that he's playing, or she. Take the iPad away, this problem goes away. Look after your own children. If you're there as a parent or a guardian or whatever, number one priority is let them grow up being kids. Let them go outside. climb trees, kick a ball around, whatever. They shouldn't be looked after by digital entertainment. To me, this is just common sense, but clearly it's not to the rest of certain parts of England and our government.
Well, I think, unfortunately, I wouldn't even say it is not the minority that do it. It's got to be leaning more towards the majority. That's why the government's had to enforce it, because kids are seeing this sort of stuff, and that's why they come up with a solution. But anyway, let's pass our thoughts out to you at home watching this video. What do you think? Write down in the comments. Were we right? Were we wrong? And what do you think? Have you got any suggestions of what the government should be doing? You know, whether right or wrong, but is there a better solution? Can you suggest some other sites than we suggested that could help, or some other methods? Write down in the comments, because it's the interaction between us here and you out there that makes YouTube very special. And that's all we've got time for this episode. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Like and subscribe.